Thanks for joining this webinar from AWeber and featuring a guest from Self Publishing School. He's going to be talking all about how to write and publish a book in 90 days. Just a note, we have actually pre-recorded this presentation and we're hanging out in the chat answering questions. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask anything whenever you think of it and we'll answer it straight away. I am so happy to have you all here. Our guest today is Matt Emery. He's a publishing strategist at Self Publishing School, and he has had over 10,000 conversations with aspiring authors about how to best write, produce, publish, and launch books. Today, he's going to talk about how you can write your first book and the difference between selling a few hundred books to being able to actually quit your job and work for yourself full time. So thank you so much for joining us, Matt. I'm really excited. And I actually have a question for you to kick things off. I know that you have written a book yourself. So what made you want to write a book in the first place?
Yeah. So writing has been my longest standing dream. I think I was maybe 14 or 15 when I first said that I wanted to do that. When I was like punching a clock at the grocery store, bagging groceries, like, I don't think I ever want to work a real job. I was over it when I was 15.
So why don't you kick us off with how we can write our own books? And I will certainly be taking notes myself.
The place that I wanted to lead people with my book was to Christ, to church, and my church is this building with stained glass windows and a cross on top. But more than anything, I think all of us in some way want to lead people to the thing that they really need. And maybe for you, that's something totally different. It took 15 years for me to write this book. I was 14 when I started writing a book, and I was 29 when this one was published. And I realized that what I had been lacking for 15 years is I never had any expert, I never had any coaching or mentorship around writing a book. I was just literally guessing, I was trying to reinvent the wheel. So I never had a process, I never had mentorship, and I was pretty much the only person in my world that I knew that wanted to write a book. So I was just figuring it out. I had one single conversation with the guy who would become my mentor on October 1st. And he asked me maybe 5 questions that I'd never thought to answer that gave me more clarity, that allowed me to move forward on my book, just with a knowledge of exactly what I was creating. And literally from that moment, every time I spent a half hour on the book, I was getting a half hour closer, or so it felt. And that's why I was able to get a book done it was actually 81 days. So what I want to try to do in realizing that the same things that plagued me for 15 years seem to plague the average aspiring author. After 10,000 conversations over the last 3 years, we're very alike. And so by addressing some of the things that I struggled with, by addressing some of the things that the average aspiring author struggles with, I'm going to give you the roadmap to publishing and launching and marketing a successful book in the next 90 days. I'm going to move pretty quick. And so please stick around to the end. If I move too fast, don't worry. You will have access to replays and slides and notes and people to answer your questions and sort of a next step. And so
can I ask you a question really quickly, Matt, before you move on?
Of course.
I think that a lot of people from our audience maybe have thought about writing a book, and I'm sure they're really excited to hear about how to do it faster with the tips that you have. But do you have any tips before we get kicked off on what if you haven't decided what you want to write about? What if you don't know what you should write about specifically? How do you get started thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of approach that. This is not an uncommon feeling. It's either, hey, I know exactly what I want to write. I got my idea. And if there's some of you in this group, awesome. Congratulations. There's also people that will think, man, I have too many ideas. I've got no idea which one to start with. And that's what's holding me up, because I don't know where to start with my so many ideas. And then there's some people that are like, I don't really have any idea. So maybe identify in this moment which group you're in. If you're the person that either has too many ideas or no idea, consider, what are the broken record conversations that you have all the time? And maybe it's things that are fairly introductory to your area of expertise, like the things that you're coaching on, that you seem like, man, I would love to go deep, and I'd love to get on this expert level with a lot of the people that I'm helping. But we spend the majority of our time talking about the really basic stuff. If you can take that basic stuff and put it into a book and really like encapsulate your area of expertise, then next time you're going to have that broken record conversation, you could just say, hey, you know what? I wrote a book on this subject. I think a lot of people write memoirs. A lot of people write self-help books. A lot of people combine those two into like a self-help memoir. It's almost like, when I look back on all of the things that I've gone through in my life that have taught me so much that I wouldn't undo because they've made me who I am, but I could have gone through that experience a lot more gracefully. I like to call this the good valley. It's like, you went through the valley, but when you really reflect on it, it was a good thing for you. How can we turn back to those people that are going to have some of the same experiences that we have in the future, and just help them get through it a little bit more painlessly? Maybe you write about your business expertise. Maybe you write about the book that you would have wanted to read 10 years ago, or that thing that was so lacking from your childhood or your upbringing. And maybe you can put some of these lessons so that the person who may also feel like they're lacking those things has a resource, the very resource that you longed for in the past.
Yeah, those are some great ideas. Also, for any AWeber customers out there who are sending emails, just look back through all of the emails that you've sent. Which one was your favorite to write? And take that as your jumping off point. It could be, because you inserted personal aspects, or because you happen to just be a nerd about that particular topic or something. And that's a really good place to start to identify, in your head, what would be the thing that you want to write a big story about.
So I'm Matt Emery. I'm from Brighton, Michigan. I've been writing since I was like 8 years old. At that point, it was like, letters to grandma, where I was just trying to use all of my new vocab words. But started a book in 2005, published that book in 2020, and kind of figured out a recipe. Wrote a second book in July, and I just published a third and a fourth earlier in September of this year. And then also launched a podcast called Authority Figures. My first book, I'll introduce this in a second. It's about a year that I lived in a van, and I traveled the country and searching for what was missing in my life. And that's where I crashed into Jesus. In that year, I spent a ton of time backpacking. And I think writing a book is analogous to backpacking trips. It's often going deep into the backcountry to a place within ourselves that we rarely explore. And we're gonna go deep. Writing a book is definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. It is tiring. It is hard. I think like 81% of people in the world have this dream to write a book, and only 1% of them actually do. It's not obvious what to do. It's not obvious which way to go. Sometimes you feel like, man, what am I doing out here? Who am I to think that I could do this? I'm just going to use my pages for one final bonfire and get a little bit of warmth before I call it quits and head out. But stick with it, even when you feel throughout this process like, man, this is tough. I don't think I'm cut out for this. Stick with it. So I'm going to give you a process and a couple of tips to stick with it. Over the next 40 minutes or so, I'd love for you to have a pen, some paper, some intentionality, and just say, this time is devoted to making progress on my book. And maybe close out of some of those other tabs, or put your phone away and just say, this is what I'm going to do with this time. And if you engage with this time and you're intentional about this time, I dare say you're going to build some momentum that really excites you about this book that you're going to write. So let's lean into that. And I think you can trust your trail guide out here. So over the last 17 years, I've fallen into all the pits, but I have eventually learned the process on how to write a. And after over 10,000 conversations with aspiring authors, I kind of know what you might go through. And of course, these are 3 of my books. Where the Rubber Meets the Road was the first one. The Detourist is the one that published the beginning of this month. And the Kaleidoscope is the tool that I use to build my email list, to build my following. It's kind of the free giveaway, the lead magnet, also known as the reader magnet. So we'll talk about that and how that is a really vital tool to really growing the business, and not just selling books, but anybody that buys your book becomes sort of a member of your community. So in the next bit of time, we're going to talk about the 3 myths that authors believe that stop them from being published. We're going to talk about the book skeleton method. This is how to plan, write, and publish a book to bestseller in 90 days. And we're going to talk about the single most important step for long-term success with your book, with your business, that'll help you create the lifestyle that you envision for yourself. So we're going to talk about the book launch at that point. And at the very end, I'll give you information on how you can personally work with Self-Publishing School. If you just want to have a coach, a mentor, someone to hold you accountable to make sure you stay on the right track, then we're absolutely here for that as well. So delving into these myths. Myth number 1 is doubt. I doubt that, and we finish that sentence in a lot of different ways. Myth number 2 is my book has to be perfect in order to be valuable. Just a very pervasive sense of perfectionism. So we'll address that. And then we'll talk about what a lot of people say is, well, writing a book takes years. And I don't want to do something that takes years. I really want to live this lifestyle. I want to have this thing within the next few months. And so we'll address the lack of a process. So diving right in, myth number 1, I doubt that. Have you ever heard the expression, doubt has killed more dreams than failure ever has? Well, fear and uncertainty and doubt show up throughout this whole creative book process. And so maybe it starts out with, I doubt that I have anything valuable to share because I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree, a certification, an accreditation, something like really special, this certificate on the wall that says that, what you have to share is valuable. But this is just classic imposter syndrome. And the more successful that people are, oddly enough, the greater imposter syndrome seems to sneak in. People that don't seem to have a whole lot of value to share are like charging along, just, thinking that they've got the world on their shoulders. So essentially what imposter syndrome becomes is now you do something and it's easy for you. And because it's easy for you now, you discount the value of that thing. While there are still people that are at the beginning of learning this skill or learning this thing or navigating life, and it's definitely not easy for them. While there's people that know what they're doing saying, all of this stuff is so obvious. It's kind of like, I doubt that anyone will care because it's obvious, or I'm just a normal person. I'm not a celebrity, or my situation is not unique. There's always I doubt my abilities. Like, I'm not a writer. I have never done this before. So if doubt has ever shown up for you when you're trying to do something new or special, by all means, own that, throw that in the chat. Always good to just say, yeah, that's me. But we're going to address that in a way that I think will be alleviating of some of the pressure that doubt creates. So Zig Ziglar said, writing my book was the most profitable thing that I ever did. And that would have been true even if I never sold one copy. So I've thought a lot about this quote. Like, why would somebody say this? Why is this true? If you never sold a single copy, how could it be profitable? Well, one real way that I've experienced this is the moment that I finished my book and I published it, I felt different. It was almost like there was this wall around my potential. And when I published the book, that wall came crumbling down. And it was like, well, if I can do this, what else am I capable of? And then I moved forward in my life with this new sense of confidence and certainty. And like, I don't know what I can do, but my potential is out of sight, and I'm going to keep charging ahead. It's such a transformative process to write a book that even as you're writing it, sure, like you want to sell copies, you want this to change your life, but maybe as you're writing it, you just think, look who I'm becoming in this process, because this person that I'm becoming in this process is so capable. That's how I interpret the quote. It's so common to also just to underestimate the value of our experience. Sometimes this happens where we say, I learned the most interesting thing today. We tell that to someone close to us, and then that person thinks, or maybe they say, really? You just learned that today? I've literally been telling you that for years. This phenomenon occurs because I think people learn best in two ways. Number one, people learn from others who are relatable. And the other way is people learn through familiarity. So maybe some of you have said, yeah, I really want to write a book on such and such topic, of which I have an expertise, but there's already 5 books, there's already 10 books, 100 books written on that subject. Well, people learn from others who are relatable. And so there are those that have never heard what you want to teach in a way that they can really connect with. And so the fact that you're writing the book and you're writing it in your way with your language, there's going to be people that have an affinity to the particular way that you want to say it. Also, even if they've heard it 5 times before, people learn through familiarity. And as soon as they're ready, your book can be there to teach them. Because you cannot say the right thing to the wrong person, and you cannot say the wrong thing to the right person. And we all have different right people. So we should feel compelled to teach what we have to teach, knowing that someone will be able to learn it from us where they couldn't learn it elsewhere. That's from The Go-Giver. So actually, your reason not to write the book is the exact reason that you need to. So that's doubt. That's flipping doubt on its head. Number 2, my book has to be perfect. Any perfectionists out there? Maybe that there's this stuff that when you create content or when you write things, you're like constantly looking it over and redoing it. If you're a perfectionist, throw perfectionism or perfectionist in the chat. I think you're going to love this section if so. So this false belief shows up in a variety of ways too. Our subconscious blurts out things like, it's not good enough. I can do better. Time to start over. That's why in this comic you have the brain that says, there, done. And the heart says, yay, doesn't it feel good to just let go of something instead of trying to make it perfect? Brain's like, skirt, you're right. It isn't good enough. And you see he's scratched out everything that he's done so far and is prepared to start over. Typical for a perfectionist to do that, or to read other authors and to play a comparison game. I read other authors and they're so much better than me. I don't know what I'm doing. I would never put my name on this piece of crap. I'm terrible. I stink. I'm the worst. This book is only 60 pages, so that doesn't count as a book. I can't publish something like that, which is false. A lot of great books are 60 pages, even less. I'm just going to embarrass myself. So your book doesn't have to be perfect in order to be valuable. In fact, I really love John Maxwell, who's written like over 80 books. He was at our conference a couple of years ago. We do a conference called Author Advantage Live. He said, I called my editor as I was writing my 8th book. I said, I think I'm figuring out this writing thing. And the reason this struck me as so beautiful is, imagine John like on his 7th book, like, man, I'm not sure I'm getting it exactly perfectly right, but I know that somebody's going to get something out of this book, that this is valuable content. Sure, yeah, I could probably articulate it a little bit more clearly, but I don't need to chase perfection. I'm just going to publish this dang thing. And he did that 7 times. And finally on the 8th book, he's like, I think I'm figuring it out. So I love being like John, not being hypercritical of ourselves, and learn by doing. And if we are going to apply any sort of perfectionism to this process, we can apply a perfect rationale. And the perfect rationale is there's a certain amount of time and effort that'll get you a certain quality. And then above that time and effort, above that quality, it's not really reasonable or rational to put any more time into the book, because you can get to an 8 out of 10 in a matter of a few months. And then you can spend the next year or more chasing incremental improvement. So get to that point where you're satisfied enough, and know that a completed book is better than a few perfect chapters. You know, if you publish a good book, I really want you to hear this. If you publish a good book, you're going to be miles ahead of the people that are chasing perfect. Because those people that are chasing perfect are never going to get any skin in the game. They're going to have 2 perfect chapters in their Microsoft Word saved to their computer, and that's it. So you don't need to write a perfectly airtight book. Plus, not all your book is going to be for everyone. There's going to be certain parts that people fixate on and learn from. So take the pressure off yourself as much as possible. And a couple of tips in order to do that is write what you know. Think of it as practice. Don't edit while you write. When you're putting together the rough draft, your prerogative, your one directive while you're writing, and we're going to talk about this process here in a second, is write. There comes a time where editing becomes part of the process, but editing and writing are not happening simultaneously. They're completely different phases of the process. So make writing a daily rock. And when you're writing, you're just writing. Maybe you protect 30 minutes a day. I don't know if any of you have ever read the book Atomic Habits, but he talks about, just go to the gym for 5 minutes. If you're struggling to wash the dishes, just wash one dish. Just write for 5 minutes a day, maybe 10, maybe 30. But get to that point where it's sort of habituated and that time is protected, and you can infuse it into an already really busy life. Know that someday you're going to hire an editor, and so the book does not need to be perfect, and just immerse yourself into one book at a time. So follow those tips. And then this one, don't squat with your spurs on. That's just a little bit of Texas wisdom. So myth number 2, you are blocking your book with unrealistic expectations. If you're ever saying my book has to be perfect in order to be valuable. So inspect what you expect out of yourself. And we're going to talk about the process so that you can take some of that pressure maybe that you're putting on yourself and you're going to put it on something that is tried and true. So if writing a book takes years, I've heard people say that. People also say, yeah, I don't have time. I don't know where to start. I have too many ideas. I have so much content, but I don't know how to put it together into one cohesive book. I'll just hire a ghostwriter. I have writer's block. And so I wager that if you've ever said any of these things, that's not what's true. What's true is that you just haven't had a process. And so success is structural, not personal. And we do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So we really need to have a good system. And a couple additional tips. We probably all at some point heard the expression proper preparation prevents poor performance. I'd guess that you probably didn't wake up this morning and say, you know what, all that I need to do today to have a good day is just to not perform poorly. I'm sure that on some level you are aware of your potential and you're kind of chasing it. You know exactly what you want. You have a sense of what you're capable of, and you need purposeful preparation in order to prosper your potential. Because a lot of authors exhaust themselves, or really writers exhaust themselves because they're not doing the right things, and they're thinking that, man, this is so hard. I'm working up such a sweat. I'm exhausted at the end of my days. I'm putting so much effort in. I'm grinding. I'm hustling. I think I'm at this point right now, we get to a point in our life where in order to get what we want, that additional thing, like that additional freedom, that more time for ourselves, we don't want to put in more effort. It can't always come down to putting in more effort to get more. Right? There has to be a point where you say, what is the really smart thing that I can do right now? So this inspired action, so that everything else in the rest of my life is easier. Well, on one hand, writing a book is really that thing. It's that thing that'll make everything else you do for the rest of your life easier. But on a more micro scale, having the proper process is the thing to just make writing a book easy and really attainable. So again, write one book at a time, and know that if you have a proper outline, you could write your book in weeks. And I think you could speak your book in a matter of hours. I'm not articulate or enough of an external processor to be able to speak my book. But if you are, then this is a really good way to knock something out in a weekend. Like what Hayden Crabtree, he had just graduated from commercial real estate college. I think it was some program within the college for real estate. And he wrote his book in a week. Since writing his book, it was sort of a response to this, man, I have so many of my friends and people who know me coming up and asking the same doggone questions, and I'm tired of answering them. So I'm going to just write this book in this week. This will be an extra product, something that I can make some passive income on. But anytime people ask that same question, I'll just say, oh, go read my book. Well, then people read his book, and he did a really good job of leading people to his website and to some of his extra resources in his book. So we ended up building a pretty decent email list from this book. And it seemed like people after the book were still reaching out to him by email with more questions. So he's like, well, I don't want to answer these questions. This is just a different level of broken record. So I'm going to put together a course. So we developed a course, charged $1,000 for the course. After people went through the course, they seemed to still have questions for him. And so we created a mastermind. It was like $4,000 to join the mastermind for a year. And when the mastermind got together, it was people that were really serious about commercial real estate, and they all kind of had the same problem. Man, how do we determine, with math, which properties we should invest in? So Hayden developed a software, and it became this thing where, of course, he was still doing the commercial real estate and doing really well with that. But this book and the opportunities that this book created for him led to about $1 million in revenue in the last 2 years since he wrote his book. He's been on podcasts with Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone, and it's just created so many opportunities. And the initial motivation was, I need to free up more time because I'm tired of being a broken record. And then you build the leverage, and then you just kind of follow the momentum. So writing a book doesn't have to take years. With the right process, you can write a great book in 90 days or less or more. But I think we want it to be less. So your reason not to write the book is the exact reason you must. You're blocking your book with unrealistic expectations if you're applying perfectionism to it. And with the right process, you can write a great book in 90 days. So that begs the question, what, Matt, is the right process? Because I go to the internet and I've Googled all sorts of things. I've seen so many different processes, and everybody says something different. The important thing about the right process, it's not a hodgepodge patchwork thing that you accumulate for yourself from 40 different blog posts on the internet. I think there's multiple processes that would really work. This is the process that worked for me, and it's very linear, and it's proven. In the last 3 years, I've applied it 4 times for 4 books. So I think where we're at, I'm gonna articulate this with a story, kind of an analogy. Like 3 months ago, I met this guy at a conference, and he was talking about how he wanted to write a book. And I was telling him about the book skeleton method, and he stopped me and he said, Matt, a couple of years ago, I was dirt biking in Colorado, and I'm like 30 miles away from the nearest road and the nearest trail, like way in the backcountry. And my buddy and I pull over, and we're having lunch, and I noticed this thing sticking out of the ground. It looked like a giant black mushroom. And he was so fascinated by this thing that he starts inspecting it, and he's knocking on it, and it's hard. It almost looks fossilized. And he realizes he's encountered a dinosaur bone. And at the same moment, he looks around in the clearing, and he realizes the rest of the skeleton is there as well. So my friend Scott finds this dinosaur skeleton out in the wild. This is the feeling that I think a lot of us have about our book ideas. We know that we're looking at something that's really valuable. This is something special. It's the beginning of a great idea, except most of it is still underground. Before we can really realize it in its full glory and splendor, we need to apply the book skeleton method. So if you were a paleontologist and you had found this dinosaur skeleton, what you're going to do is you're going to excavate. You're going to pull out all the bones. You're going to know everything that you want to put into this book. And then you're going to categorize them and say, okay, there's a tail, there's a rib, there's a foot, there's a leg, there's a hip, there's a skull, and then you put these things together. It's like, what is really foundational? Okay, what is the through line, like the spine of this book? And what's going to really give this book its bite? And then you put together this skeleton. And I can look at the skeleton, same as you, and say, okay, there's no flesh and blood on this skeleton yet. There's no words that have been written for this book yet, but we can all tell what this book is. We can see that that's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You can know your book prior to ever writing a single word, which addresses the biggest frustration that I had for 15 years is I only knew my book 9 months into it, maybe even longer than that. Once I had written 50,000 words and put blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and only then did I realize that this is a misshapen, malformed book that has no potential. And now I'm going to start over. I'm going to do the same thing over the next 11 months. So this process will ensure that when you do go to add flesh and blood, that is to write the book, that every moment you're making progress on the book that you want to write, that's going to convey the message that you want to write, that you want to share. So for starters, this is the excavation. Now, this is also called mind mapping. It's also called brainstorming. It's also called clustering. The fact that it has so many names shows that it's not a revolutionary idea. Maybe you've done this in different things in the past. What it is an effective idea, and it doesn't have to be revolutionary. It just works. So you create a mind map by writing your book topic in the middle of the page. And then around that book topic, you just write everything that you can possibly think of that applies to that subject. So the different stories, different examples, lessons learned, books, ideas. To Kelsey's point earlier, maybe you go through and you realize, man, these are the 15 emails that I've written that I like the most. And there's wisdom in each one of these. So let me break these 15 down. And you start identifying some of the principles that, that that connect all of these things. And so what you end up with is something like this, is a center topic, and then maybe 40 or 50 things that apply to that center filter. Now, this is my mind map from my first book, Where the Rubber Meets the Road. At that point, the book was going to be called The Art of Giving Up. And so what I did is I said, what are all the things that when you give these things up, life just seems to immediately improve? Things like expectations, perfectionism, attachment to outcomes, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, rigidity in my identity, worry, wandering thoughts, the need to be in control. And so after putting all of these things on the page, I thought, man, this is not 50 different things. This is like 6 or 7 different things. And they just all have different ways that they manifest. So I took a colored pencil and I connected the things that I thought were relevant. I color coordinated them. And then in doing so, it was really easy to then put together an outline. So to give you a really simplistic example, but something that I think you'll be able to apply to your own book, is let's say that you were writing a cookbook. And so cookbook recipes, all you did on this mind map is you wrote down, what are all the foods that I love to eat? And then you begin looking at these things and you say, okay, I see how they subdivide. I've got breakfast foods, lunch, dinner, dessert, and snacks. So I'm going to put 5 sections of my book together, and each section is going to have like 3 chapters. Now, that's a total rule of thumb, It's not a science. Like, you don't have to have a 15 chapter book where there's 5 sections and 3 chapters per section. But a lot of great books are about 5 sections, or some like odd number, 3, 5, 7, and they usually have a couple of sub chapters there. And so once you identify the categories, the different ways that your content fits together, you can put this into the skeleton. And so now you'll see, I'm going to start with something that's fundamental, that's foundational. We're going to start with breakfast. So maybe you break your book down chronologically. Maybe you break your book down, what is the most simplistic, most basic thing, and then slowly get more advanced. It's not something that I can give you a rule. I can assure you, though, that once you have everything that you want to share, as an expert on this subject, you're going to see exactly how it can break down. And you're going to know what belongs first and second and third, fourth, fifth. If you're writing, say, a lead generating nonfiction book, I suspect maybe a lot of you are. Let's say it's going to be 20,000 words. And you know that your 15 chapter, 20,000 word book, well, that's going to be 1,300 words per chapter. So when it comes time to actually add flesh and blood, and you really do want to write a book and you're taking it seriously, and you've given it some consideration, you've built a schedule, and you say, okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to write from 6 to 7 a.m. every day, or 5 to 6 every day, or I'm more creative between 10 and 11 p.m. So I might wake up a little bit later, but I'm going to protect that 10 and 11 p.m. Like, give a little bit of thought to when you have the gift of gab, and make that your schedule for when you're going to write. Set a goal for yourself. Maybe it's a word count goal, maybe it's a chapter goal. I am partial to chapter goals because I tend to overwrite. And if I have a word count goal, then I chase that word count and I don't do my best work. Plus, you could sit down at the beginning of a week and say, all right, I got 15 chapters. I'm going to write 3 chapters this week. That's 3,900 words. So my goal is 3,900 words, but more importantly, it's 3 chapters. And I'll have this book done in 5 weeks. You can kind of project that way, forecast that way, especially when you don't edit while you write. Every word is a word gained. Later, you're gonna edit. That's the next step in the process. And if you're speaking your book, you could even do this faster. I'm going to sit down for a half hour and I'm going to speak chapter 1. And then later on today, I'm going to do chapter 2. And I'm going to do all 15 chapters in the next, 7 days. So if you're putting pressure on the system, not yourself, you'll know, because things are going to be moving fluidly. The moment you start feeling pressure and it's on yourself and you're judging yourself, and you're being really critical with yourself, that's probably the point where you've bucked the system and now you're relying on yourself to be successful. But remember, success is structural, not personal. John Updike said, some of the best books you have ever read were written 1 hour at a time. And I imagine that you're not going to change a whole lot about your life, like go rent a cabin in the woods for 2 weeks. But you're probably going to write this book infused within your normal life. And so just be reassured by John that this is how it's done. Peter Drucker said, only what gets measured gets managed. So this is a screenshot, a picture of my marker board last year, October, where I was monitoring my word count. And so put something public, something really visible that you're going to see a couple times a day, just to remind you where you're at, in accordance to your goals. So if you follow this process, it will work. This is Emma Sumner. She's 8 years old. Now she's 14 or something, but 6 years ago, she wrote The Fairies of Waterfall Island. She did $4,000 in book sales in 3 months. She just donated that to charity because she's awesome. She appeared on some TV and magazines. She did a book signing with 10,000 people there. She's now got 81 ratings for her book six years later. Has sold thousands of copies. The reason I show Emma rather than somebody else is an 8-year-old doesn't get in their head like a lot of us do. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to just be dumb enough to follow a process and get our overactive brains out of our own way. So Emma was smart enough to just follow a process and trust it. So after step 4, once your book is written, you have a manuscript. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about book production, but I will say that anybody that schedules a call to connect with Self-Publishing School or works with Self-Publishing School is going to have the book production completely done for them. So set you up with an editor, get your cover designed, get your formatting done, make the book look really professional, really capture the essence of the book in the artwork. We're actually going to help you publish it. We're going to help you write a good book description, get the right keywords and categories, and do all the SEO. Set you up with lead magnets to help you build the email list, build you a website in some cases. So book production, and really like book business or book funnel production, is something that we can do for you. And then that moves you to the launch. So not to be hyperbolic or to be dramatic, but the book launch is the single most important, highest leverage activity that, if done well, will forever change the trajectory of your book. And so when somebody sells 500 books in a month, great. You might make a couple $1,000s a month on your book. But if 50% of those 500 people join your email list, there's going to be amazing opportunity to connect with 250 people a month, maybe more, maybe a little less, in order to have them receive that next thing. So your book really should lead people, and the book launch is the way to set it up for success so that you get a ton of reviews. And anytime an unfamiliar person, a stranger, encounters your book on Amazon or Goodreads or Ingram Spark or Barnes & Noble, they see these reviews and they think, okay, this is a book that I can trust. So the book launch is all about building trust. And really, on the flip side, it's all about reducing the resistance that will naturally exist when somebody is making a book buying decision. First thing you need to do is have your external, your first impression of the book reflect the intention, attention, and the effort that you made on the inside of the book. So you really need to have a good cover. Something with complementary colors, something with your author name, something with easy to read fonts, an appealing image, utilizes the rule of thirds. So this is the theory that we apply when we build covers for somebody. This is my latest book. I took this screenshot a couple of days ago, but #1 new release, already 65 ratings. It came out September 1st. It is now, as I'm recording this, September 12th, I think. And so the book grabs attention. It's easy to read. It takes 3 seconds to know what my book is about. And through the book launch, been able to get quite a few reviews. So it doesn't need to be a work of art, though. It could just be straightforward, like Chandler's book, The Proven Path from Blank Page to Published Author. Almost 500 reviews. You can actually get, if you look inside of Chandler's book, you can actually get his book for free. You put in your email address, put in your contact information, you can download this book for free, which is not a mistake. It's just a tool to take your book and recognize, yeah, I can make a lot of money selling books, or I can make a whole lot more money by having people's contact information and allowing them to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested in this information. And if you have anything else for me, here's my contact information. Let me know about it so I can buy it. That's really what the book is supposed to be. It's a billboard to lead people to exit their trajectory, come into your business, look at your menu, see everything that you have available, and buy what suits them before carrying on. So that was a little extra, less about the book launch and more about lead magnets. Second step is you build this launch team. Third step is you get ongoing reviews to keep the Amazon algorithm happy. And so a launch team is really just a group of people that are going to support your book. They're going to read the book. They're going to leave a review on the book. They're going to share your book. This is like the street team. Like, this is the people that are going to make sure that your book cuts through the abundance of books. There's like 100 million books online. This is how you get your book noticed. You incentivize them with a free copy, maybe they get their name in the book. Maybe they just want to support you because they like you, they love you. Maybe there's something else in it for them. But I find that people like to support each other, and all you have to do is ask, and you'll build a lot of connection this way. So, a couple of ways to set your book launch up for success. Throughout the process of writing this book, you have a lot of opportunities to get people invested in your project. So, getting people invested in your project might be, hey guys, what are the main things that that you would want to know about such and such topic? You poll your social media. I asked my social media, hey, what are the things that when you give these things up, your life immediately improves? 50 people responded, and not only did I get book content, but I also had 50 people that were beginning to be engaged in my project. Hey guys, I'm looking for some votes. Which cover of these three options do you like the best? Which of these three subtitles do you like the best? Anytime someone engages, they interact with this book, they're going to be a little bit more invested in it. And so involve everyone that you know. There's something in this launch for everybody. Don't scrutinize the list. When you do recruit somebody, get commitment. I like to do what I call a choice of three positives. This is basically saying, hey, here are the three different groups that you can join the launch in. Which one makes the most sense for you? I hold people accountable then. As soon as they've defined the relationship, then I know exactly what to hold them accountable to. And ultimately, the goal is to have them write honest reviews. Help people understand how this is going to help other people find your book in the future, and how far a review goes to reduce that resistance, to create more buyers. And the launch, it's not necessarily something that happens over the first week or the first month. Never stop searching for win-wins. And maybe that looks like, oh, my friend John just started a company. I'm going to support his company. And after I've supported his company, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I would really also appreciate a book review. So tons of ways to launch the book and get ongoing reviews and set it up for success. And if you follow these steps, you will have a successful book, and this book will create a ton of opportunity. Like Nate published his book back in February. I think he has twice as many reviews now. It's like 100 or 270 something. This guy has over 1,500 reviews now. Chris Lippincott published his book a couple of years ago. And really, like, the whole idea for his book is showing people the potential of mediumship and connecting with people in the afterlife. And what he's done with the momentum that his book has created is he's actually started an academy to help people channel their skills, their spiritual skills, their spiritual gifts. That's pretty cool. And at this point, there's such a variety of books that are probably out there that one of the main questions that I get is, well, Matt, will this work for me? I'm writing such and such a type of book. It's a children's book. It's a nonfiction book. It's a fiction book. Yes, these ideas will work for you. Another main question that I get is, well, can you guys just kind of help me? Can you hold me accountable? I'd really love a coach. Do you do that? Yes, we also do coaching. We have a bunch of author mentors on our team. And so if any of you are wondering, yeah, what is Self-Publishing School? How can I be more involved in this? Self-Publishing School is kind of like a mix of Indiana Jones, Jillian Michaels, and the butler from Mr. Deeds. So that perfectly answers that question, right? Someone to blaze the trail for you, someone to hold you accountable and coach you, and someone to make your life a lot easier. Essentially, a step-by-step online education, like an author program to help you write, publish, market your book, coaching with a ton of different successful authors, group coaching with a variety of authors as well, cover designers, editors, designers, a community of actually over 3,000 authors that are on the same journey. They make great people to be on your launch teams. They're all across the nation. They're all across the globe. And so really, what I want to do is try to recreate what shifted for me 3 years ago. And the reason why I went from 15 years of struggling to write a book to having a book in 80 days it's so helpful to have an expert in your corner. So we've opened up our calendars for really the next 2 days so that you can speak with us personally about how you can apply some of these ideas. If there is something holding you back, we'll show you how to overcome it. I guarantee that you're not the first person to feel the way you're feeling. The call is free. It's just trying to set you up with somebody to build clarity so that you know exactly what the next step is going to be. So if you're serious about writing this book and you want it to be a great book, you hold yourself to a high standard of integrity. It's like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to learn. I'm going to apply some of this coaching and understand that this book is an extension of your business. And so you don't treat this book like a hobby and expect it to pay like a business. You treat this book like a business that'll pay like a business as an aspect of your business. And so intend to spend time, to spend energy, to spend dollars or whatever your currency is on putting your book together successfully. And I guarantee that if done well, if done intentionally, this will be something that you'll look back on and you'll think, that was the greatest decision that I ever made, was writing that book, because after I had my book, everything became easier. So this is the link that you can use to book your call, www.self-publishingschool.com/apply. We're also going to put this link right in the chat so that you can just copy that, paste that into the search bar and go book your call. There's a couple of questions like, what time is going to be the best for you? You pick your time zone. I encourage you to pick the time nearest to right now that works for you. And we'll just jump on the momentum from this call into the one-on-one call. It'll be a phone call and we'll call you. You'll have a couple of questions that you'll answer in there, just so we can pair you up with the best person. But you'll see this video when you've successfully booked a call. And yeah, I look forward to talking to everybody. Zig Ziglar said, if you wait until all the lights are green before you leave home, you'll never get started on your trip to the top. There's not necessarily a right time to write your book, and there's definitely not a wrong time. I think no matter how busy you are, no matter how crazy life is, if you're at a point where you say, man, something's got to give, I'm ready for life to be a little easier, then over the next few months, we'll help you integrate writing a book into your life, and they'll get that thing published. We'll get that thing launched with you, get some marketing behind it with you, and then you can relish in the ease that's created from this book.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. That was incredibly interesting and informative for me, and I'm sure everybody else here. Again, we're going to probably put that link into the chat, and we're going to have a follow-up email that includes a video recording of this, the slides, and a link to get signed up as well, if you would like. And we are going to sign off now, but we will be around in the chat for about 5 or 10 more minutes to answer any questions that anybody has about this at all. If you are an AWeber customer and you want to, bat around some ideas with everybody else about the book that you might want to write, go ahead and head to our Facebook community, and I'll pop a link to that in here too. And let's talking to each other about what we might want to write. I think that, if you are writing emails already, there is a very easy transition to a book, and it can help you, like Matt said, turn it back into more email subscribers and more engagement, and in the long run, more money, and allow you to really stand on your own doing this. So thank you again so much for your presentation, Matt. It was very, very interesting and informative for me. And thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.